It's really great to be here. I've been coming here religiously for several years now, which is saying a lot because I don't really go to things ever. So I'm going to read from a new short story, and it's just going to be the beginning, so just know when it ends that that's not the end. Right now, it's called Pet Love, but that might change. Our dog was dead, and it wasn't even our dog. It lived with the family across the street, but it liked us best, we were sure. We gave it a name. We took care of it in every imaginable way. In our minds, it was a very good dog. It always did what we wanted it to do. To keep walking or to stayed. It always was being walked by one owner or another who was always looking depressed and bundled up in coats. The dog would look unhappy too, until it saw our blue car pull up along the road. Its tail would wag and its ears would perk up, and I've been told that these things mean a lot for a dog. I've been told that we had reason to believe it was love. I don't love dogs. Not even close. But this one made it easy. I loved it from afar, the way I loved best. My husband took the death worse. I didn't know why it struck him so bad, but he asked me to draw him a bath, so I did. All our lights were dim. We couldn't find the right bulbs. I sat on the toilet and watched him sob. It was all so depressing that I could not cry. I was jealous of my husband, his ability to mourn. You need to understand he was no weak sister. He grew up in a place with dirt for a road and had been taught in school the most efficient way to behead a snake. You got the feeling that he had lived Old Yeller every moment of his life, but he knew how to lead out love when it was needed. Right then, I wanted to climb into the tub with him, to get up close to whatever it was he felt, to run my hands through the hair that matted down his chest. But I stayed on the toilet, dry and silent. I stared down at my knees, which were pale and bare. With my nail, I carved an X onto one and then an X onto the other, 2 bullseyes. I watched the lines turn red, then fade and disappear. I carved 2 more X's and watched them go. Then I did it again, which is to say, I didn't know what I was supposed to say. My husband was in mourning, but I felt cold. Whenever I saw him cry like that, I had a hard time believing all my pieces were in place. If he had a heart and I had a heart, then what was wrong with mine that it never did much? Sometimes I pictured it stuck inside my chest, the small purple organ wearing a black, puffy coat. Maybe it belonged with the family across the street. Maybe it belonged in a cage in their kitchen, pumping and panting and staying put. Sometimes I thought if my childhood were darker, if my heart had been crushed early enough, there might have been time to rebuild it up strong. Sometimes I thought if a parent had died, or a friend gotten cancer, or a dog been lost, I might have learned what it takes to be a better lover. I mean better at loving. I mean how to bloom a heart. My husband's fingers pruned to a pulp. He got out of the tub and kneeled down at my feet, his wet hands taking hold of my knees. I wanted to say something sweet and true, but I couldn't find those kinds of words. There was a pain in my chest worth worrying about. My throat felt like it just might close. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" my husband asked. "I'm hungry," I said. "Don't you want to eat?" In the kitchen were the leftovers from our last fight. A carton of eggs all cracked in the sink, my favorite blanket stained red with wine. We fought because we hadn't kissed, or we hadn't said our I love yous, or we hadn't gone to bed together for over a week, 2 months, a half a year. My secret was that I loved our fights. The meaner he got, and it hurt his heart to get mean, the more likely I'd be to speak up, to bite back, to break down into a good cry. The meaner he got, and I knew he cared, that I still had a shot at making things right. I made us sandwiches and poured pink lemonade into red plastic cups. We sat down at the tiny kitchen table, our knees bumping heads from opposite sides. And I thought about something I could say to him, about the dog or its death, or the startling dread that this loss was a sign of bigger losses to come. Like the day after our wedding day, when I woke up and made a run for it. We both tried to forget because it didn't bode well for our grand scheme, but it's true, and it happened, and it almost stuck. I spent the 48 hours we were apart searching for a new place to live. I told the agent I needed somewhere sunny to thrive. She said every room is bright if you buy the right lamp. She took me to an apartment that had a bullet hole through the bathroom door and another place that could have been used for a magazine feature on urban dust. Don't you get it? I said to the agent. I need a place that will make me happy. She laughed, and I knew what she was thinking. That lovely woman with the well-oiled bangs. If she had a nickel for every time someone thought a new address could change a life, she wouldn't be taking dollars from people like me. She'd be living in squalor with piles of change. After spending 2 nights at an hourly lodge, I had to come back to my husband, my home. He was in the same place where I left him, our bed. I took off my clothes and slipped in next to him, and we renewed our conjugal vows to forget. When we finished eating our sandwiches, my husband said he wanted to go to the hardware store for a few good planks. He was building a fence around our yard, even though we didn't have anything precious to contain. At the door, I helped him zip his coat and planted a kiss on the scruff of his cheek. I know you loved that dog, he said, but to this day, I don't know why. Can you tell me why? I would like to know. Let's not talk about it anymore, I said. I went to kiss him one more time, but his cheek was already cold and out the door. Alone in our room, on our marital bed, I made my best attempt to cry. For the dog or my husband, I didn't care. One was dead, and the other, well, I didn't know what to think about that. I decided to call an old therapist who used to help me spend my time. She was mostly trained in child abuse and would often have me sit in a beanbag chair. She never helped much, but I couldn't blame her. You need a patient who is willing to talk. Who is more messed up, I asked her. The person who cries over someone else's dog or the person who's jealous of all those tears? We've spoken about this before, she said. I can't do sessions over the phone. You need to make an appointment and come in. I hung up like I always did. It was nice to know she still followed the rules. From my window, I could see the house across the street, glowing picket white like the opposite of grief. I wanted to know how they were taking the loss, if anyone else had cried for the dog. They were just strangers to me, these people whom I'd watched for over a year. My husband was always the friendlier one. He talked to them like a neighbor should. They loved him, I'm sure, because everyone did. They told him the day the dog got hit. I pressed my nose to the window glass, but there was too much glare. I couldn't see. I decided it was time to introduce myself. I put on my coat and went outside. But there was our blue car, parked in the driveway. And there was my husband, not at the store. He was sitting in the passenger seat with his eyes closed tight and the battery on. When I opened the door, he didn't move. I sat down in the driver's seat, buckled up. We sat in silence for a very long time. 13 minutes, according to the clock, but clocks can be wrong. Then he opened his eyes and stated to me, "I was going to adopt that dog for you. Their baby was allergic. I thought it might help." "Help what?" I said. It came out mean. He turned to me. He put his hands on my knee. My eyes welled up. "You know," he said. "Help you," he said. I was probably allergic to it too anyway. He laughed and took his hands off my knee. I knew I'd said the wrong thing again. When my husband laughed, it wasn't out of cruelty. It wasn't his way to win a fight. When my husband laughed, it was so you wouldn't notice the wet spots that had punctured his chest, the bullet holes. I turned to the window so he couldn't see me cry. That dead dog was the nicest gift I had never received. I need you to know that I loved my husband. He asked me to get out of the car, so I did. Thanks.